Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
So good to have you back for the first edition of Donnybrook for 2019. Thank you so much, and thanks to our friends at the Gatesworth for making this program possible, as you do week in and week out. Wendy Weiss is taking the week off, and we welcome back Brenda Talent from the Show Me Institute, who has kindly offered to take her seat tonight. Thank you, Brenda. Along with Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He's Ray Hartmann, one of the founders of Donnybrook, now in its, 32nd season, Ray? Can you believe it? 33rd season. Thank you, sir. Well, he's the official historian of the 9 Networks Donnybrook. And everybody knows Alvin Reid from the St. Louis American, STLmag.com, and beyond. And we'll start with you, Ray Hartmann. I know you had been getting an inkling about this for quite some time, but I was a little bit surprised when the St. Louis Business Journal released a leaked version of the Better Together plan that would merge the city and the county if there's a positive vote for this statewide in 2020. So here's the deal. Apparently, the city and the county will become one. One fire chief, one prosecutor, one mayor. One police chief. One police chief. I stand corrected. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, they will not merge the fire departments. Correct. They will not merge the schools. Correct. Yet, anyway. But the thing that really gets me is that folks in Poplar Bluff and St. Joe will be deciding the future of Webster Groves and South County and North City, and I think that really stinks. What do you think?
Well, I do too, but I've been saying this is the biggest governance issue of our lifetime in St. Louis. It is. And I've been saying for some time it's going to...
Well, since 1988 anyway, when we did it last time.
Well, I mean, it's the biggest... This is for real. And the math is that I think the backers think that neither the city nor the county would support this, but that there's 4.7 million other people in the state who don't have a dog in the fight, who can and most likely will be persuaded that it's in their interest to get St. Louis governance cleaned up. And Rex Singfield and others will have a rather large war chest, I would think. They've sort of signaled that already through Better Together. And so I think there are major problems with it. I think that it's, while the idea of us unified is in general a good one, I think that it's not going to help regionalism as much as it's said to, because less than half of the region is now in the city and county, which is a big difference than it was 40-some years ago. I think the cost savings are overrated, and I think that the biggest problem is the idea. It's so anti-democratic that I think it's going to be a lot of bitterness in the city and county going in, which is not a good thing.
It's ludicrous, the idea that outstate Missouri is going to overturn the will of the people of St. Louis and the people of St. Louis County and decide a new way forward for us. I mean, it's crazy. People are going to go nuts.
And it doesn't have to be that way, because the folks at Better Together could have a board of freeholders, which would be made up of locals from the county and the city, and then they could decide something, or they could have a non-binding resolution before they go statewide. They could first see if people who actually live and work and pay taxes in the city and county want this. That could be non-binding. And then if they approve that, then they can go statewide.
They, as Ray says, they know how strongly people oppose it.
Yeah, they could have enabling legislation, which would be hard to actually oppose, if they just said the statewide vote was to enable the city and county to do it. I don't even know if they need to.
There's already
but maybe
in our
they don't even need that.
Constitution what you were talking about, Charlie, the fact that city and county voters, if they wanted to, could come together and vote on whether they wanted to merge and make it either a county or make it the city as the dominant entity. That's already in the Constitution.
Oh, is it?
But it's for the voters of the city and the county to make that decision.
I think, the sovereignty of the, municipality of St. Louis County, I think, Ray, it's like it's, a complete deal already. It's not. Now, you want some people to dig in and start scratching and clawing. It probably has already started when that article came out in the Business Journal. I'm here to tell you, this is not going to happen because this county, and I will include Jackson County, but St. Charles won't be jumping down for this because the last thing they need is St. Louis County and city to merge this big monstrosity next to them, and all they'll be thinking is we're next.
Right.
And every town out there, the thing was, hey, you're next. All right, Nixa, whatever's next to you, and Mexico, whatever's next to you, and Fulton, all that, you're next. I'm telling you that you will see the county, the residents of the county, Republican, Democrat, Independent, fight this to a point that anybody running for any office, dog catcher up to county executive, the first question is, where are you at on this city-county merger? And if you hem, and if you haw, or if you act like, well, it might, some savings, is like, all right, next. Because you're leaving office.
Well, that's probably why Steve Stenger didn't bring it up. And of course, we didn't really cover the county executive race because he was up against Paul Berry in November, and it was a landslide. But in his first race for county executive, Steve Stenger was staunchly against any merger. And now times have changed, maybe because he knows he's not going to run again or be part of
that's
it.
another oddity about it is the Republicans outstate. The notion that they would want to, already the city is a one-party rule, and the county is getting close to being one-party rule. And if you put the city with the county, it would be one-party rule.
Clearly.
The Republicans would be locked out of all offices in the most populous area in the state. I don't see why they want it.
I think we can infer that Mr. Reid is not in favor of this proposal
Yeah,
as a
well,
resident. Well, and there's a lot of, I mean, in fairness to people in Kirkwood and Florissant and Clayton and other places that are very happy with their police departments and so forth. I understand it, and I'm not an advocate of this. I think that it's, but I don't, and it's not a done deal, but I think that it is, it would be nice if there was a way to merge the city and county more traditionally with the city entering the county. No one has ever done this, by the way, in the country. You look at the Nashvilles and Indianapolis, they've done the merger, the kind of idea of the county, which I've always thought would be a positive step for the city and county to come together. This is not that. This is creating one Unigov with 33, wards or whatever you're calling them. And I'm telling you, it's going to be topic A for the next 2 years.
And why not schools? I just ask, we'll start the campaign right now, statewide. Why not schools? You ask yourself that, and that brings it back to a dynamic that is flat out race. And I'm not saying these folks behind this are racist in any way, shape, or form, but these are the cards that are going to get played. And I'm telling you, you got a lot of entities that will come together that never, ever come together about anything. Will stand up and stop this mess. I guarantee that.
Well, I think they're going to try and stop it with schools not even being part of the equation.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but
right.
one of the reasons, why?
Well, I can give you, I think the strategic why is the reason that President Obama kept the big pharma out of the Obamacare discussion. I mean, I think you pick the
third rail.
You pick the fights you think you can win. And again, I do think we need to be.
Well, how about fire departments? Why aren't fire departments included? If this is all about cost efficiency, except for maybe the firefighting unions are pretty strong, and the fire and the districts.
These districts where you got 3 or 4 people making 6 figures don't do anything. Fought 2 fires in 1 year, but yet we got an administrator makes $150,000. Please, they're protecting their jobs.
Well, obviously, if you did cut the number of police departments, you'd have fewer police chiefs, and so your costs would go down. There's no doubt about that. There are efficiencies that can be had in the city and the county.
But there's efficiencies always come at a cost, Charlie. I mean, the more peaceful suburbs, the Kirkwoods, the Claytons, aren't going to get the same kind of police coverage that they get now if all of a sudden we'll be sending, and you couldn't blame this new super department to cover the hot spots.
Well, and Charlie...
Well, and I know
everything
that.
comes at a cost.
And I think that there are people in the city of St. Louis who feel that there are great inequities, and that's why they can't pay for trash pickup or police.
Sure.
I don't think it's the inequities. I think it's been very bad leadership for the past at least 3 decades.
I agree.
Where we decide that because, we like a grocer, we're going to give him a tax break, even though people have to eat, and no other city in the country gives tax incentives to grocery stores, but they do in the city of St. Louis. And then the city, which also, of course, has started in the last 30 years to subsidize every and any major professional sports franchise, which we didn't do in years past when we actually had, money for things. And we then figure, where's the money? Well, the money is in that grocery store that you subsidize, that sports team, and elsewhere, not to mention a $1 billion airport that's not really even being used.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the airport. Well, two things are funny. One, the part of it that you ought to like is the fact that it probably will eliminate the battles between Olivet and New City and De Pere and so forth. It will do that. It would do that, I should say, eliminate the competition and some of the tips that you're talking about. I think the airport is the invisible elephant in the room, and that is the question of privatizing it. The two big things the city brings, they have a big liability with regard to the pension and the city's impending bankruptcy as a liability, and then they have the airport, which is its big asset. And I think that's a big dynamic here. I think a couple of things that have already been put out there. One, this idea that it's going to be great cost savings. There's a certain amount of services that got to be delivered, whether it's cleaning the streets or protecting people. And just because you have a larger entity doesn't automatically mean it's going to be that much cheaper to deliver those.
But there should be fewer police chiefs.
And the other thing, they say, well, we're going to be one of the 10 largest cities. This is not going to change our rank in the cities in America.
Well, and the other question is just, in the end, what kind of leadership will the region have? I mean, I think the devil's in the details here. But aside from that, what we've seen regionally, this is my opinion, is a failure of leadership, whether it's in the city or whether it's in the county. We have not had strong leadership. Instead, it does seem like they're chasing the newest, brightest, shiny object out there, whether it's expanding MetroLink, whether it's different sports teams or whatever, rather than dealing with sort of the systemic problems that are plaguing our region, which are crime, poor schools, just basic government services.
Well, the answer to that, Brenda, is that because it's so divided, first by state, with a river dividing it, and then with all these municipalities and these counties, there's no one person who has enough turf to actually have any power. And I think that's probably one of the reasons Better Together thinks that being bigger, you'll have a little more clout. So maybe a Mayor Daley could emerge.
Well,
here
let's
in St. Louis.
wait. And then maybe Citizen Rex will have more clout. He already running the city because he had Slay and all them under control.
Is it possible for him to have more clout?
Well, he's trying. Like I said,
Charlie,
this is one man dictating the county and the city. No way.
Charlie, there are other
just not
alternatives.
happening.
There are other ways. They've brought in, I know David Rusk, who's Dean Rusk's son, has come in as an expert, and these folks have brought in lots of experts.
Sure. Right.
And and I'm saying there are better, well, no, I'm not saying they're advocates of this. I'm saying that people like that have pointed out that there are structures in place, like East-West Gateway Coordinating Council, that could form the basis of doing real regionalism, and that would not involve doing this unigov. In other words, we think of just East-West Gateway or bi-state as just transportation. We could do a lot more from those structures than we do to the things Brenda's talking about, and I think we should. But we're going to have to see. This is going to be topic A, I'm telling you.
I agree, but before people think that we're so fractured and that's why we can't grow, I say look to Charlotte. Charlotte is a growing city in populations and jobs. It's got decent financial entities based there. It's got a nonstop to Europe, maybe two of them. And if you look at the map, it is just chock full of one little city after another in the metro Charlotte area in about 7 or 8 counties. It's just as fractured as we are, with about 100 cities and towns. But we always say, oh, well, look to Indianapolis or Louisville. Well, why don't the leaders at Better Together look at Charlotte? Or Boston, for that matter. Boston's in 3 different counties, and it's surrounded by dozens of cities and towns, and they seem to be doing pretty well. So when we bring in these experts,
I wasn't talking about them in the context of this. I was saying that there are experts have come in and said these structures make sense for you to think about.
Well, this is finally going to bring the city and the county together to fight this.
Right.
I mean, this is an immoral thing that Better Together is doing, to say we're going to take the decision out of the city residents' hands and the county residents' hands, and we're going to try to buy the election outstate.
Well,
that's a ridiculous thing for them to do.
Well,
Bill, I want to ask you about some. I'm not going to go to first to you, By the way, thank you very much for joining us again, Brenda Talent. I want to ask you about what happened today when Wesley Bell announced some major changes in policy as the new county prosecutor. Mr. Bell is no longer going to prosecute people who possess marijuana 100 grams or less. He is no longer, according to published reports, going to prosecute people who are behind on their child support. Let's see what else. He says he's no longer going to prosecute, or rather require cash bail for misdemeanors, but it's unclear if that's actually going on now anyway. What do you think about some of these changes?
Well, I think he's delivering on his campaign promises. When he ran, he made a number of these promises, and he's delivering on them. I've heard that he might have pulled back a little bit on the child support statement, that it wasn't quite accurate from what his perspective is. Having said that, every prosecutor has discretion. And my concern is when you issue them as policy directives, what does that really mean? When you have laws on the books, you have police officers in the field, and I always use my Al Capone example, right? He didn't go to jail for all of his gangster behavior. He went to jail because he was a tax evader. So what about that discretion by that police officer who sees that individual who knows been involved in some criminal activity? But I mean, what happens if all they have is 100 grams or less of marijuana? You can't bring them in, you can't talk to them. You got to just say, oh well.
Yeah, you got to get a better case. I mean, and like you said, this is what he campaigned on. So
yeah, and I'm happy about it. I mean, I think I was told by somebody that on child support, it's not that they're not going to prosecute, they're not going to use felony prosecutions as much, on the theory that if you put somebody in jail or give them a felony, their ability to make their child support becomes decreased. So it's sort of a logic to that one. But I think that it's about allocation of resources and about priorities and about fairness. And I think that, because he ran on it, I think he's right.
Well, I think Brenda's right in the sense that if every prosecutor in the state or the country has his or her own rules regarding marijuana, then what's the point of having a legislature which actually sets laws?
But we have whole states that have their own rules.
I know.
mean, I can't say Wesley Bell is the poster child for that kind of thing. I mean,
didn't
that's
say
just
okay, but you have to admit, in our system of government, we do have city councils and legislatures who make the laws. And I don't think that the district attorneys and prosecuting attorneys are supposed to choose which ones are legal and which ones are not.
Well, I mean, for
doing
one
the
time,
same thing
you
in the
couldn't
city.
smoke in public places in Kirkwood, and that was the only place in the state you could do that.
Didn't they change the law?
Well, I mean, they did statewide. There was a vote, but
it wasn't by the prosecuting attorney.
No,
See,
but
my point is, who's supposed to make the law? It's not the prosecuting attorney.
Well,
He's
wait a minute.
supposed to
Well,
prosecute
towns
the law.
make laws. People make laws,
Yeah.
and the prosecutor just has to enforce the law that's given to him.
Well, they've
And the
always,
state law
And
says
like
it's
Brenda says,
illegal.
he has discretion, and he can
Right.
say, we're going to go after this, but we're not going to go
Well,
after
they've
this.
always had
If the
process.
man,
That's fine with
all
that.
this sniping at Wesley Bell, first of all, if the man stays on the job for years and doesn't run for another office, he's a step above the state attorney general who, was there for a hot minute before he ran for another office. All this, banging on Wesley Bell, he's been in the office like 8 hours or
You know why?
whatever.
I
Look,
think-
people
I think
get
why-
fired. I have policies that I'm going to follow. You know what you guys do? Send crooks to jail, and how about we, let people
Well, I'll
with
tell you,
a-
here's why I think that Wesley Bell is somewhat of, I think he's questionable, because he's running on this cash bail thing, and I don't think there is any cash bail for misdemeanors in St. Louis County. I think he took a template from the ACLU and George Soros, which they used against Cy Vance Jr. in New York.
Okay.
They brought it here.
That's right. So,
and
so
they keep
people,
talking about cash
people
bail.
run. This is news. People run nebulous campaigns where they're not always maybe telling the truth. Oh my God,
Charlie,
I'm shocked.
Charlie, if
You said it.
Charlie, if you define questionable as able to be questioned, yes, because he has clearly been questioned more than any public officer, official in history. I mean, but for the amount of time he's been here, he won by a shocking
He did win.
landslide.
I know,
okay?
I know.
And
But you know why?
elections
Because the
matter,
media didn't cover him.
See, no.
Locally-
He won because he got more votes than the other person, and elections matter. And
No,
here
I
he
agree
is,
with that.
and
I'm not disputing that he's. But I'm
People are-
saying that he is the reformer for cash bail, who was the judge in Velda City who was profiled by the Huffington Post for incarcerating people.
He won
for who couldn't make bail.
And he changed his tune, Charlie.
And he won the election.
What one would hope is, look, there are reforms that he's pushing that make sense from a criminal justice standpoint, but that he can use his platform to actually reform the laws then so that they're uniform. If these policies are actually good policies, why don't we see them embodied in the law? And he can be the big microphone, if you will, for these kind of reforms. But again, I'm just a little bit concerned sometimes when you say these are the policies and you're putting them out there. I wonder how the police on the beat, how did they implement that? How did they make those judgments when they've been used to doing certain things?
Okay, Bill, I want to ask you about his firing of 3 longtime prosecutors who had a combined 70 years of prosecutorial experience, including Ed McSweeney. And I think there's some concerns about this because McSweeney on Facebook, I believe, had criticized Bell, which I agree doesn't seem to be a smart thing to do. But as a public employee employed by the government, I think he and his right to speak out has been upheld by the Supreme Court. Do you think McSweeney's got a pretty good case?
Oh, well, I have no idea how the Supreme Court will view this, Charlie. I'm just looking at it. I hate to see anybody lose a job. And Ed McSweeney, I know Ed McSweeney and I like him, and I think he's a professional prosecutor. This is another case of a older fellow, misusing social media. I mean, whether it's Jamie Allman on Twitter or Ed McSweeney on Facebook, Larry Connors. I mean, right after Wesley Bell won, Ed goes on Facebook and kind of takes on his new boss. You know, terrible idea. I mean, you know, I don't even answer email at home. So I was hoping that Wesley Bell would be a little more tolerant, and I'm rooting for Wesley Bell, and I was hoping that he'd say, Ed, I don't want you going on Facebook. And like, Ed is not some maniac who was one of the, you know, palace loyalists or anything. I was sorry to see Ed get terminated. I don't know what the Supreme Court will say about it. The Kathy who led the grand jury in the Michael Brown case is a little different thing. You know, I supported McClellan when he wouldn't recuse himself. I like the idea of the 2 women leading the grand jury. I will say when I read the grand jury transcripts, I thought, they're a little bit too much on Team Wilson, I thought. And if a pro-prosecution person like me thinks that, I'm sure that Wesley Bell supporters were very strong about that. But I was sorry to see her lose her job. And the third one I know very little about and don't know her. But I'm sorry to see anybody get fired.
Well, of course, and you're such an ageist about social media. I mean, the Twitter works for some of us. I do think that it was, well, in the first case, Mr. McSweeney did kind of put a new definition on strategic communications, but and I don't know how that's going to play out. I think that certainly of the 3, the least surprising would be the person that handled the grand jury testimony.
Right. I think
that's under the elections matter.
Have we forgotten about civil service? That you have to jump through hoops to fire someone who's a civil servant.
And now
Not to mention
we know
they're union employees now,
I was going to say, 2 of the 3 are union employees, and
We'll
they'll
see
see what rights they have, and I'm sure they're going to be visiting with lawyers to see what cases can be made.
Alvin, were you surprised, Alvin, that Claire McCaskill, U.S. Senator, who needs no introduction on this program, certainly, went after Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, the newly elected representative in New York, who beat a long-standing Democratic congressman? Fine. Well, anyway, Claire McCaskill, in an interview, one of the exit interviews, said that she was the bright, shining object and derided her opinions on health care and immigration, saying that they weren't appealing to middle America. And then Ocasio-Cortez lashed back and said, you know, she was offended by those comments. Why was Senator McCaskill going there?
I have no idea. You know, you win with grace, but you lose graciously as well. And I think if there was any time where you just say, look, I lost. Some people are very disappointed, including myself. You won't hear from me for a while because I just need to stand up and let these people who got elected go on with what they're doing. Golly, I'm very disappointed in Claire. I just wish she would just be quiet. Now, I'm not saying she has a right to say whatever she wants to, but this, I just look at, times are different in politics. I get that. But this whole thing where you got to have something to say after the election and somebody in your fellow party, okay, she won, however she won. She won. You should be applauding the fact that the Democrats hold the House now instead of, deriding one of the House members. I don't get it. Claire, please, just stand down. If not forever, for a while.
I don't think she was really deriding her. I mean, I've heard Claire McCaskill talk about herself as the bright, shiny object that the Republicans were looking at. It's an expression she uses. I think that she's felt liberated losing and can say what she thinks. And is just giving the Democrats some advice.
And I think she's also pointing out some issues that are important to middle America. And actually, my reaction when I read the article was, why did this representative feel the need to go after Claire? Because she wasn't.
Because
she was really saying
Claire
that, and part of what she's saying is,
not,
what's the substance there? This young woman has a chance to prove that she's got the chops for what she's been elected for.
Right.
And so she should be doing. And actually, she could have said, this is beneath me. I don't need to respond.
The interesting thing is Ocasio-Cortez came in here and campaigned against Lacey Clay. So she was sort of who made the point to her, you're welcome to St. Louis, but this isn't the Bronx, and when she was supporting Cori Bush here. And I think that Claire, if you saw the whole interview, it wasn't that much of an attack. And, Claire just feels liberated to speak her mind.
All right. And we'll ask you to feel liberated to speak your mind by sending us a letter, care of KETC, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails, letters at ketc.org, and tweet #DonnybrookSTL. And may I now tell you that Donnybrook is available on podcast. So while you're walking in the morning or gardening, listen in on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and tune in. That's Donnybrook and Donnybrook Your Turn, which tonight will be led by the one and only Alvin Reid, and I'll be alongside as his trusted assistant. Everybody else will see you next week. Hey, Brenda, thank you so much for sitting in for Wendy. We do appreciate that. Don't go away.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
He's bright. I'm shiny. You're the object of our affection. Your turn. Charlie, Brennan, Alvin, Reid. We're going to start with David in Rock Hill. Hi, David.
Hey, David.
Hey, how's it going today?
Just fine.
First, I want to say that I'm a black man, and I supported Wesley Bell, so I may be a little biased towards him and stuff. But I'd like to congratulate him on his appointment to his new office, elected office, and I hope he's going to do a good job. And I would first like to say is one of the things I'm quite sure that he's going to do is investigate the corruption that's going on in the probate office. And I spent $1,600 on some transcripts. And when a copy of that comes in the next few weeks, I'm going to make sure I send you guys a copy.
Definitely.
All right.
Send him a copy.
All right.
Huh?
All right. Thank you very much, my man.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to reading that. And we'll move on to Leo in St. Louis. Hi, Leo. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much for taking my call.
That's what we're here for.
If you remember that Proposition P was pushed through for the firemen and police, and then inside of it, it sat down at $1.6 million for the circuit attorneys, and then $4.3 million for the Parks Department. Now that's for new equipment and all like that. Now they're talking about putting a $19 million bond issue up to buy new trucks. Now, bear with me, 5 years at $4.3 million is $22 million. Would have bought brand new equipment and put it back in there. But they're going to put new equipment in the parks, but they ain't going to be able to get the trash out of it.
Are we talking the county or are we talking the city here?
The city.
City.
All right. So you're saying that was
refuse.
So we would be, not we, but just if there was a merger, this is the kind of debt that the county might be, or the kind of problem that would be absorbed by the county. Is that your point?
No, the merger is that we have to pay for refuse now, and then going in, they're going to pass a $19 million bond issue, but this Proposition P, $4.3 million went to the Parks Department, and I'm going $4.3 million in 5 years would have paid for the new and attrition in new refuse trucks because they can't get all the trash picked up in the city.
Okay, thank you, man.
And
let's go to Jackie in Kirkwood. Hi, Jackie.
Hello?
Hi, Jackie.
Hello.
No, John. Oh, it's John.
All
Hi,
right.
John.
Hi, John. Go right ahead.
What?
Go right ahead.
Am I on Donnybrook?
You are.
Yes, you are.
Did you misdial?
Oh, God. No. I wanted to get your opinion
All
on
right.
something. This government shutdown. I mean, the presidents in the past.
All right, hang on a
shut down-
second. Hang on. We're not talking about the shutdown, man. We're going to move on. Bill in Rock Hill, how you doing?
Good evening, gentlemen. I wanted to talk about the latest proposal of merging the city and the county.
Okay.
First of all, it's not the first time. One of the panelists tonight alluded to a Board of Freeholders plan. As I recall, there was one done, I think, back during the early 90s.
I think it was 88, wasn't it?
Being
Yeah, 1988.
late 80s, early 90s.
And they also, 1930 and 1962 as well. We do this every 30 years.
And I know the last time they tried to do it, it got thrown out by the courts because the Board of Freeholders was only made up of property holders, and whoever was the judge decided that said since renters and people like that were not included, it was ruled unconstitutional and thrown out. So I don't see how they're going to go about doing that again unless they find a little more inclusive way of doing it. I guess my problem is, in principle, I agree with what they want to do, but in practice, I think it's wrong that outstate Missouri is allowed to decide this, that if this is to happen, I think the people that live in St. Louis City and the various county municipalities are the ones that should be deciding it and not a bunch of people out in rural Missouri. Also, I think what I call the pizza politics of St. Louis, that is to say that everybody only wants to see their piece of the pizza, not the entire pizza, is probably going to be what's going to derail any effort to try, because the smaller pieces like the Calverton Parks and places like that, those guys don't want to get pushed out from underneath their personal little money tree there.
Bill, thanks a lot for the call. Really appreciate it. Yeah, he brings up some good points.
He does, but I think this would be one of those things where the smaller pieces of pizza will join together with the larger pieces of pizza to, make a pretty good pie.
Yeah, I don't think the big or the small pieces are looking forward to this.
No, not at all.
Well, but I do think in the city of St. Louis there are some who see the financial prospects of the city enhanced by a merger and definitely want it for that reason, at the risk of losing some political power. Let's go to the tweets and see what the Twitterverse is saying, starting with Sister Sarah 23. I agree that if people have felonies, aren't in jail, then they struggle to pay child support. Let's address the reasons why they aren't paying child support.
Matthew Dean, 616. Really, Charlie? Playbook of the ACLU and George Soros sounds like wingnut paranoia. Not a good look.
And we heard from Nanchi 536, available via podcast. Hello, 2019. And I'll just jump in. It is true that the ACLU not only gave Wesley Bell $50,000, which is their right to do, and his right to accept, but also the ACLU has said they're going to keep a very careful eye on him, and in fact released another release this week saying that there are expectations they have of Wesley Bell. And George Soros gave $40 million to the ACLU in 2014 for the express purpose of revising and changing prosecutors in cities across the United States. So it's well documented and not denied.
All right, let's go to Mark in Baldwin. Hi, Mark.
Hi. My question is, or my comment is on the merger. If I was a citizen living in Camdenton or Springfield, my attitude would be, what do I really care if there's a vote? How will I benefit as a citizen in Camdenton, Missouri, from this vote? My taxes are going to go down. Do I get more police protection? That's why to me, it's hard to believe that people on there would really care. That's my comment.
Well, before you go, you still there, Mark?
Yes, sir.
All right. Would you vote yes or no based on that? You live in that town. Would you vote yes or no?
I don't think I'd vote. I don't think I care. I mean, unless somebody can show me some concrete thing that I will benefit from this merger, then I don't care. I wouldn't vote. It wouldn't make a difference to me.
I'm sure there's going to be television advertising spent by the proponents of Better Together to try and make this issue really relevant to people in St. Joe, Springfield, Columbia, Kansas City, elsewhere. Now, what they're going to say, I don't know. Who's next?
Dave in O'Fallon. Hi, Dave.
Dave.
Hi, gentlemen. Good evening. Thanks for having me on. Great show tonight.
Thanks.
Alvin, I love the shoes.
Oh, thanks. These are a gift from my mom for Christmas.
That's what I was going to ask you, as Christmas present. Hey, you want to comment on the merger? You guys probably know more about this than I do, but my understanding is the reason the out-state people can vote goes back to the Civil War. And we have a statute on the books that gives them that authority. I know there's the same situation with the police force in St. Louis until a few years ago. A couple of points. One, can that be challenged in court as a way to get this back together? And two, we've got such a unique situation with the city of St. Louis not being part of a county. And my understanding that goes all the way back to the Civil War as well. And I don't know of any other situation in the United States where that exists. What about a compromise of the city of St. Louis becoming part of St. Louis County, but the municipalities all keep their sovereignty, all keep their rights and the things that they have along those lines? That would eliminate a lot of the duplicate services, but it would just bring the city back into line with the rest of the country.
Okay. I think that's on the table now, probably officially, because some will probably want to do that as opposed to this plan coming out of Better Together, but it remains to be seen. And the legal challenges, trust me, are probably being drawn up right now. That would be my guess.
Yeah, your first proposal might be the one because it's possible. Tim Fitch, who's now a member of the St. Louis County Council, has suggested that the Better Together people leaked a real nuclear option that was outrageous. And then when they dial it back a little bit, it'll seem reasonable and more popular. And maybe this plan to have the city join the county and become the 90th city or town, whatever, maybe that's the end goal. I'm not sure. I mean, I can't say. It's right. Who's to say? Okay, thanks a lot. Teresa in Oakville, what do you say?
Well, I think that it would be good for people on this committee, Better Together, to take a trip to Houston, Texas, where I lived for 30 years. Houston is the hugest urban sprawl in square miles in America, and they got that way by annexing all of the subdivisions and parts that weren't incorporated when they were built. So you have the city of Houston extending 70 miles away from downtown in some cases, with smaller villages and municipalities that did incorporate themselves. The city of Houston Police Department travels hundreds of miles away from the downtown city area to police because the city extends out that far.
Wow.
And I think if they would go and look at some other cities that did allow urban sprawl and then annex all these new developments into the city before they could afford to the services. Houston has a lot of school districts. They didn't annex the school districts, but the police department, Houston Police Department, goes everywhere that's not covered by independent township or city that has its own mayor, but there are very few of those in Houston.
Thank you very much for the call.
All
Very
right.
informative.
All right, Teresa, you need to show up when they have the public hearings on this or whatever. You need to show up and share that story with them. Because Charlie was talking about Charlotte, that has the municipalities, but yet we don't look at them as a, right. They actually make it work. Jackie in Kirkwood. Hi, Jackie.
Hi. I have a comment about Claire McCaskill.
Go right ahead.
I think it's really terrific that Claire is now speaking out and saying how she feels. I find that some of these congressmen and senators, they hide behind what they really feel. And I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to Claire talk about the things that she was not available to say.
Yeah.
That's my comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's more interesting than just sharing platitudes. I will agree there. I just don't see why she needs to criticize a fellow Democrat. And I'm not a Democrat. I'm just saying I don't see the value in that for anybody.
And I have great respect for her. I'm just one of those that, all right, I just take a little downtime. There'll be plenty of time. Just let the people that just were elected to the House and now are, the House majority, let them have their day. And I just thought, just not out of sight, out of mind, but your time will come.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jackie. On to Tom in Wildwood. Hi, Tom.
Yo, hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
How you doing tonight?
Good. How about you guys?
Just fine.
Pretty good.
Hey, about the Prop Z, definitely I voted no for it because of the 8-cent sales tax, etc. But one thing I have is, and please stay with me a minute, if Brennan is before Conrad, how come when you get your ballot, the yes is before the no? When you get your ballot at every election or whatever, why is not no before the yes?
Well,
kind of an abstract, stupid thing, but
well, no, it's not.
Why is yes so acceptable as the right thing to do?
Well, when the order of the ballot by name is whoever is in line first. It's not alphabetical. Isn't that how you?
I think so.
Somebody literally has to physically be in line and wait there for your name to be on there first. I don't know that it's any different between the yes and the no, but I'm not sure on that. I never noticed.
That's a pretty interesting question. I never considered that.
I just never noticed, but we'll look into that.
But you're right. I mean, in Missouri, sometimes people line up a week or so in advance, or they get their surrogates to do that because they feel that being at the top of the ballot is an enhanced position.
Right. And, ballot language also creates that situation where a yes is a no vote and a no is a yes vote. So I guess that was how it was on, I forgot which one, this last election. But if you were against it, you voted yes.
That happens,
Right. All right. That was Tom, right?
It was.
All right. So go to Dorothy in St. Louis. Hi, Dorothy.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Fine.
Good.
Are you there?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Ready to
go?
Yeah.
Bear with me. I'm sorry. I have a few comments. One is I'm an elderly senior citizen who lives in the county, and I'm a white woman. I appreciate Bell, and I think give him a chance. Don't nitpick on him yet because he just got in the office. Also, sometime back last year, Trump said he was going to break the unions, and that's been hushed up. He had our governor going in after something, trying to break the unions. Even though all the citizens here in the United States have voted against it.
All right. Well, Dorothy, people stood up against right to work. So I guess people in Missouri aren't quite into that union busted just yet. But thank you. Lori in St. Louis, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, I have a question regarding one of Ray Hartmann's comments he made earlier. I live in the city, and he implied one of his comments was impending St. Louis bankruptcy. Is St. Louis going bankrupt? And I should know about that. And another thing, I have a comment on is Wesley Bell coming in and firing, 3 people right off the bat. Now, I just wonder how this would look if a white prosecutor came in and immediately fired 3 black attorneys. Would it be considered racist, and should this be considered racist? Thank you.
Well, I think this is the majority of people who worked in the office were white. If you flip the script, the majority of the people who worked in the office would still be white. So I don't think that would be the situation. But you do make a good point, because I thought about that too. I know it's been 28 years, but I would really like to go back and look in the paper as to when Bob McClellan was first elected as a prosecuting attorney and see who stayed and who went, because he came in at a time, I believe, when Gene McNary was still the county executive.
Or H. Milford,
one
or the other. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I think whoever the prosecutor was, my guess would be was a Republican. So
I think it was Buzz Westphal who left the job to become the county executive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'd stand corrected. But I would be interested to see who stayed and who went.
That's a
when
good
Bob
point. Yeah.
came into the office. Thank you, Laurie.
Thanks. On the first point, I do think the city of St. Louis does have some financial challenges. Like last year, it was about $10-15 million in the red, and they had to make some adjustments. So I don't know if it's going bankrupt, but I do think it's got some financial challenges. We'll put it that way.
Right. Stop the giveaways, Charlie, right?
Do we go to the Twitterverse?
Let's do that.
All right.
Mark, 06775559. Good or bad, if the city and county merge, one good thing would happen. Our crime statistics would look a lot different with the correct representation of the population. Might actually get us off a lot of those worst of lists.
And we heard from Liz Will, the dust-up between McCaskill and Ocasio-Cortez was unfortunate. I admire Claire for her excellent service to Missouri and the country. I hope Ocasio-Cortez lives up to her promise of her early success and popularity.
And Kyrock 31, Wesley Bell needs to run the prosecutor's office and not the Office of Social Services. Prosecute criminals and make the streets safe. Hashtag Donnybrook STL. Get one in before we go. Dan and Clayton, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. My comment concerns the proposed city-county merger and the efforts of Better Together. If that's possible, could the citizens of Missouri decide to consolidate 3 rural counties or 4 rural counties or 5 rural counties? Is there something unique about the city or the county, or can we impose our will on other people too?
Sure, absolutely.
Right.
And that may happen. That may happen. I mean, we don't know where this is going to end. Nobody's saying.
Right. That if you are 3 or 4 towns and you're over, some type, maybe you cross county lines, they could merge all your services. And yeah, you live in this county and you live in that county, but all your services are merged together because we decided to do that. And I get to vote on it, and you're out there, you wouldn't like that very much.
Whereas there are lawmakers in St. Charles who are trying to eliminate police departments in cities of populations of 5,000 and less. Maybe it is time for people in the county and the city to start deciding what we can do to revise St. Charles County.
Yeah, I'm in.
Who's next? I
didn't mean that devilish laughter. Scotty.
Mary in St. Louis.
Yes, I just want to comment about when the other caller called in and said that was it race-based when, some people got fired in the prosecutor's office. I just want to ask a question behind that is, we're always basing everything on race. And I just want to know, did any of us have any control over what color, creed, or nationality we came out as? And why is that always the basis?
That's a fair point. I get you, but hey, that's not America in the 2000s, the 1900s, 1800s.
Well,
it's a factor, but hey, it's not the be all and end all. Good point, Mary.
I think it's a real good point.
Excellent point. Joe in Afton, how you doing, Joe?
Yes, talking about the city of St. Louis being the only one that doesn't have a county or is part of a county, the city of Baltimore is the same. The big difference is that they're in that Northeast corridor and they got a lot more money to access.
Okay.
But they're not sitting pretty either.
Right,
Baltimore's not a growth town, creating jobs and population like Austin, Denver, Portland, Charlotte. I mean, we know the growth cities, and you know, it's a challenge for St. Louis. We've had some hard times. I mean, between the Fortune 500 companies that have moved or were bought up, Ferguson hasn't helped our image. We are, you know, it's fair to say that we're fighting among ourselves a lot, like the whole country. So, but I think we can get our act together.
And when you talk about Louisville and Indianapolis, and people point to those mergers were established not in the same vein, certainly not in the same way as this one would be put upon us. But I know this because I have relatives in Indianapolis. It was kind of like they were merging a county at that time that was pretty much 80% land, and I know for the 20% where people were living, they probably didn't like it that much. But this was about amassing, you know, acreage.
I also want to say, people keep citing Louisville as a great example, but do we really aspire to be the next Louisville? I don't recall that being the hot place where young people are moving to. You know, a lot of these hot places are also state capitals.
True.
Indianapolis, Columbus, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Which is the capital there? It's one or the other, I believe.
Right.
Isn't it?
St. Paul.
St. Paul, yeah. And that is a huge advantage for some of these bustling cities, too.
Absolutely.
Austin, for example.
Mark in Wildwood. Hi, Mark.
Hey, good evening, sir.
Hi there.
Go right ahead.
Hello.
Hi, go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm calling about the consolidation of the county and the city.
Yep.
I've had experience living 12 years in Nashville, which consolidated Davidson County and the city of Nashville in 1960. Pretty advanced thinking for a southern city. You've got Indianapolis, which is a city-county form of government. Miami-Dade. Toronto was a forerunner many years ago. Some of the most dynamic cities in the country are a consolidated form of government between the county and the city. Here you have the divisiveness between the county and the city. You've got competition. You've got school issues. You've got multiple. I'm new to this area about 2.5 years and understand that there are a huge number of governmental entities in the county. You've got police departments, fire departments, school systems, government offices, et cetera, and this is a very expensive way of doing government. And think of the power that St. Louis combined with the county could be when you think about the metropolitan impact, the draw to business, the educational strength of the area. This is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned, but my worry would be that people will bring up race, violence. We lived downtown for 2 years before we just moved out to Wildwood earlier this year, or I should say last year now. And everybody's worried about violence in schools, and I think it's a red herring, and people have to get beyond it and look to the bigger picture of the vitality of the area if they came together. Just some thoughts.
All right, thanks for the call.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, you know, the schools aren't part of the mix yet, and you did mention Nashville. I think Nashville also is a little bit different. It's it's in a state that has no income tax, and it's also right to work, and it's got a very hip, legendary music market. And I know Nashville's taken off. I mean, they've got nonstops to Europe too, but it's a little bit different. And I'm sure that the success of Nashville is not just because of the government structure. Because like I say, there are some cities like Boston that are completely fragmented, and they seem to be doing pretty well.
Yeah. The Nashville airport, there's a flight from Boston, and people have live lobsters that they bring back with them.
Yeah.
I used to catch flights through there all the time. You see that. It was kind of cool. We got a tweet. Holy Star 77. Worry not, Claire. Ocasio-Cortez just got to Washington and is already making an impact in ways your centrist politics never would.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, do we have time for one quickie?
Dan in Calverton Park. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, guys. At the risk of sounding hypersensitive here, I want to take you on, Charlie, a little bit about your comment about Ferguson. You've been here. You know what kind of a community it is. And when you say that Ferguson, was adversely impacting the reputation of St. Louis, it's not Ferguson itself. It's what happened in Ferguson.
Correct. That is correct. Correct.
Tragic
Yeah,
event.
absolutely. I was at Paul's Market
all.
over the weekend, and man, I try and shop there when I can, visit as often, and I know it's a great community in many, many ways. It's what happened in 2014.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
Is that it for tonight?
I believe that's it.
I think that is.
All
okay.
right. Happy New Year, Charlie.
Thanks. Yeah, you too now, Alvin. Thank you.
Okay.
And everybody out
Happy
there.
New Year to you guys. Hope you had a great holiday season. We look forward to seeing you next week. Donnybrook, your turn. Have a great night.
Don't forget the podcast.
Yeah.